We are the Group 6. In operation of managed flow in aggregate planning is first, product decision. The product decision consists research and technology, marketplace and demand. Then below the marketplace and demand is demand forecast orders. Then below up below the product decision, process planning and capacity decision. After the process planning and capacity decision is aggregate plan for production. The aggregate plan for production consists workforce, raw materials available, inventory on hand, external capacity. Then below the aggregate plan for production is master production schedule and MRP system and detailed work schedules. So, what is aggregate planning? Aggregate planning is the process of developing, analyzing, and maintaining a preliminary approximate schedule of the overall operation of an organization. And also, aggregate production planning typically is applied to a 3-month period. Aggregate planning covers all production activities at a facility or for a enterprise across several facilities, not just individual production runs or the manufacture of individual products. In simple terms of aggregate planning, it is an attempt to balance capacity and demand in such a way that costs are minimized. The term aggregate is used because planning at this level includes all resources in the aggregate. For example, as a product line or family. Aggregate resources could be total number of workers, hours of machine, time, or tons of raw materials. Aggregate units of output could be include gallons, feet, pounds of output, as well as aggregate units appearing in service industry such as hours of service delivered, number of patients seen, etc. So, what is the purpose of this planning? The purpose of this planning is to figuring out the level of production inventory and workforce required to respond to fluctuating demand in the medium term. With this information, a business can assess when demand will spike or wane and ensure it has enough production to meet the moment. Aggregate production planning also lets manufacturers know what staff, materials, output rates, timeline estimates, and budget costs they need.
Aggregate planning inputs and outputs. Input: the beginning inventories, which is actual quantity on hand from the preceding period, the forecast for each period of the schedule, and the customer's order, which are quantities already committed to the customer. So, under the inputs has four parts. The first is the resources. Resources has the workforce and facilities. Second, the demand forecast. The demand forecast is for the period for which the planning has to be done. Number three, policies statement. Under the policy statements are the subconstructing, overtime, inventory levels, and back orders. And number four, and the last one, is the cost. The cost of various alternatives and resources. This includes cost of holding inventories, ordering cost, cost of production through various production alternatives like subconstructing, back ordering, and overtime. So outputs, projected inventory, master production schedule, and committed inventory. Outputs has two parts. The number one is total cost of plants. Then number two is the projected level of inventory. Under the projected level of inventory is the inventory, subcontracting, output, employment, and back ordering. So note that the back order is an order for a good or service that cannot be filed at the current time due to lack of available supply. So this is the aggregate planning inputs and outputs. Thank you.
Hey guys, in this juncture, we're going to talk about the aggregate strategies. So steps taken to produce an aggregate plan begin with the determination of demand and the determination of current capacity. So capacity is expressed as a total number of units per time period it can be produced. So this requires that an average number of units be computed, since the total may include a product mix distinctly different in production times. So another is the demand, which is expressed as a total number of units needed. So if the two are not balanced or equal, the firm must decide whether to increase or decrease capacity to meet or increase or decrease demand to meet the capacity. So in order to accomplish this, a number of options are available. So first, in the capacity option, so changing inventory level. Finished goods inventory can be built up in periods of slack demand and then used to fill the demand during periods of high demand. So in this way, no new workers have to be hired, no temporary or casual labor is needed, and no overtime is incurred. Then hiring or layoff. So by hiring additional workers as needed or by laying off workers not currently required to meet the demand, firms can maintain a balance between capacity and demand. So varying production rate includes the overtime. So by asking or requiring workers to extra hours a day or an extra day per week, firms can create a temporary increase in capacity without the added expense of hiring additional workers. And another is subcontracting. So frequently firms choose to allow another manufacturer or service provider to provide the product or service to the subcontracting firm's customer. So by subcontracting work to an alternative source, additional capacity is temporarily obtained. Then using part-time worker. By utilizing temporary workers or casual labor workers who are considered permanent but only when needed on an on-call basis. So by typical without the benefits given to the full-time workers. And the last option is the demand option. So it has an influencing demand. So promotion, just like advertising, direct marketing, and other forms of promotion are used to shift demand. And back ordering. So by proposing delivery on current orders, demand is shifted to a period when capacity is not fully utilized. This is really just a form of smoothing demand. Service industries are able to smooth demand by taking reservation or by making appointments in an attempt to avoid walk-in customers. So some refer to this as partitioning demand. And the counter-casual production mixing. So varying price increase demands when the demand is less than peak. For example, matinee price for movie theaters, off-season rates for hotels, weekend rates for telephone services, and pricing for items that experience seasonal demand. So that is all about the capacity and demand options.
So methods for aggregate planning. So there are three main methods of aggregate planning. So first we have the chase strategy. So chase strategy match output rates to demand forecasts for each period, vary workforce levels or vary production rate, and then favored by many organizations. So what does aggregate planning really mean? It means that when the forecast demand is seen to rise, the company will also adapt to raise their production levels. So that's basically what it means. The company chases the forecasted production level. And then next is the level strategy. So level strategy is where the daily production is uniform and the use of inventory or idle time as buffer, and stable production leads to better quality and productivity. So level strategy, regardless of the forecast, whether it rises or whether the forecast demand rises or it decreases, it doesn't matter because the level strategy tells us that the production of the company stays the same. It's stable. So that's the level strategy. So the third strategy is the hybrid strategy. So the third strategy is just the hybrid of the previous two strategies, the chase and the level strategies. So this keeps the balance between the production rate, workforce, and inventory levels while still responding to demand as it changes. This alternative offers a bit of flexibility that can satisfy demand while working to keep production costs low. So that's all. Thank you.
So next is the advantages and disadvantages of the aggregate planning strategies. So first option, changing inventory levels. So advantage, it changes in human resources are gradual or none and there's no abrupt or production changes. While a disadvantage, the inventory holding cost may increase, shortages may result in lost sales. So next, varying a workforce size by hiring or layoffs. So advantage, it avoids the costs of other alternatives. And the disadvantage, hiring, layoff, and training costs may be significant. So the third one is that varying production rates through overtime of idle time. So advantage, matches seasonal fluctuations without hiring or training costs. And then the disadvantage is that overtime premiums, tired workers may not meet that demand. So next, subcontracting advantages. It permits a flexibility and smoothing of the firm's output. While the disadvantage, loss of quality control, it reduced profits and loss of the future business. So the next option is that using part-time workers. So advantages, it is less costly and more flexible than full-time workers. So the disadvantage is that high turnover, training costs, quality suffers, and scheduling difficult. So next option, influencing demand. So advantage, it tries to use exist capacity and the discounts draw new customers. While a disadvantage, the uncertainty in demand is hard to match demand to the supply exactly. So next one is that back ordering during high demand periods. So the advantage is that it may avoid overtime and it keeps capacity constant. While the disadvantage, the customer must be willing to wait, but goodwill is lost. So the last one is that counters seasonal product and service mixing. So advantage, it fully utilizes resources and allows a stable workforce, while the disadvantage is that it may require skills or equipment outside the firm's areas of expertise. So that's all.